Hello and welcome everybody to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons. I'm Shawn Merwin. I still have a voice after Origins, and I'm here with Teos Abadia. Hey Teos, did you have a weekend?
I had a weekend. I wielded
Yeah.
chainsaws and did not hurt myself, though I did then, after cutting a tree, have to repair a fence, but that went swimmingly. So, all things told, it was a win of a weekend.
There you go.
And,
Were you dual wielding chainsaws? I think is the question.
no, I don't do anything like that. If you recall, I think 2 years ago on the show, I had a little bit of a incident with
Mhm.
chainsaws and really more with tree branches than chainsaws. So, no, I'm careful. And then I wrote a lot. That I did recklessly.
That's good. You were dual wielding keyboards. I was dual wielding squares at Origins, one in each hand as we did the Ghostfire Gaming booth. So everybody who came up and said hi, a few people said hello, a couple pictures. They said
Nice.
say hi to Teos, so hi Teos. And we have survived one con, the first for me, first con of con season, I guess. And Gen Con is just 4 or 5 weeks away, so that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Origins
we
is
will
feeling a
get
bit like a
there.
warm up these days rather than a main
It is
attraction.
it is definitely a large regional convention as opposed to a small national convention at this point. But that's
Uh,
okay. That's okay. You know how these things go. So there's peaks and valleys, but always on the top of our peaks are our listeners. Top of mind. We love to hear from you via all of the ways, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But we're going to get to a couple of questions today. First, from Luck Whisker via YouTube. Luck Whisker, I edited your question a bit, so I apologize if we lose anything in the translation here. But there were really two questions, so I tried to pull them out. The first is I'm curious to know what, if any, role you think that dungeon crawls have to play in modern 5e. Dungeon crawls, as such, don't exist in 5e anymore, primarily because the mechanics that once made them work, like the opportunity cost mechanics like wandering monsters, the slow trade off of exploration, time versus health and resource attrition, resource management, etc., have really been stripped away from the game. Many, if not most, GMs no longer really know what dungeon and wilderness crawls are even for. So the game has turned primarily into a series of encounters connected not by hallways or roads, but by DM narrated moments and jumps through time and space to the exact location where the next important scene is to take place. So the question at the end of this was uh, isn't it a really important change that happened here? When did it happen? Was it done deliberately or did it happen by accident?
hmm.
And uh, my answer is that there's a lot to unpack there. I played D&D when it was dungeon crawls, right?
Mm-hmm.
First edition, those old adventure modules, it was you're at the cave entrance, you're at the front door, or you're trying to find it in Tomb of Horrors. And so, right, start with your 10-foot pole, and here we go. And I have a fondness for them, a nostalgic fondness for them, but I also don't want to delude myself into thinking that they were perfect. They they were the remnants of the game's focus. And so
Hmm.
uh there that was a limited tool set for creating fun. And so a lot of the game back then was rote actions, right? Like I said, take out the 10-foot pole, tap, tap, tap.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the door, listen at the door.
Roll a
You
stone
find the
into the
treasure.
room.
You're right. You find the treasure chest. Ooh, you run over and you open it up after killing the monster. And then that necessitated something to break that roteness. So that's where we get ear seekers, right? You put your ear to the door. Oh, something crawls out of the wood and into your ear. Oh no. That's where we get rock rubs. Oh, I searched the pile of bodies. Oh, well, you didn't think to burn them or right do anything. So now these things. Oh, you run over to the chest and start searching it for traps. It bites you because it's a mimic, right? All of those things were a natural extension of that roteness. Uh, Thoughts there, Teos?
Yeah, it is. It's this question, when did this change happen? It happened organically because of play, as you're saying, and not just, ear seekers and bookworms and things like that, but it was the play. D&D has always been fun, right? But at all points, you kind of realize, well, it's fun, but I wish this, right? Whatever the this is. And
Right.
back then, as we explored these dungeons, it was a long process to poke at the squares in front of you, to throw the stone into the room, to check the chest, 10 times in 5 different ways, and just on and on and on. It was tedious. And by the time like OD&D basic, AD&D, by the time I was in 2E, we were really looking for other ways to interact with what was going on around us. And we were playing other games, right? Shadowrun and any number of other things. And some of those had these a little more of a narrative angle. And so things began to change because we wanted more fun or a different kind of fun. And so it began to evolve. And what starts happening, right, is like you get skills. And now that you have a skill, you don't have to just describe that you're poking at every stone. You can just say, I would like to make a whatever check, name the skill from the edition. And now we resolved that very quickly. It's the same thing as tapping, except it isn't. And it's that feel that people are often referring to, right? That the dungeon crawl mentality was a very unique set of things, all based on what the game was like back then, that we were all very happy to slowly abandon until one day you realize, oh, you know what? I miss when equipment mattered, or I miss, and those are all things true, but are you ready to give up everything that you have now? And so the reality is most people say no, which is why the game continues to move in a certain direction based on all of these wants we all still have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then the second part of the question was, as a consequence, what does the exploration pillar even mean in today's game? Is it that they think exploration is not fun for the player that they're catering to? And assuming you agree that it's a real change, what does exploration even mean in 5e anymore? And I think this sort of is answered by what we talked about, right? Exploration can mean a lot of different things. And what it meant in 1978 is different than it means now. And even now, it means different things to different people. For some people, exploration is just going from one town to another. It's the travel rules. For some people, exploration is a dungeon crawl and getting around traps or working your way through a maze. For some people, exploration is just opening up new avenues of knowledge within the game. For me, exploration is going from the known to the unknown. So you can do that through role playing. You can do that within combat. It's all part and parcel. But in terms of a codified rule set for exploration, there's a lot that goes into it that some people would call something completely different. But it's still that opening up of the unknown.
Yeah, there is in both parts of this question, there is a sort of leaning into some concept of that someone has deliberately taken away our fun.
Yeah.
And I just want to address that for a second, that nobody has taken away fun. The game really has, as I said before, evolved, and it's not been done by any one entity. If anything, you could say Wizards has generally just been influenced by the factors around it and what they've seen at various people's tables, rather than, had an aha gestalt of, oh, we are the only people to come up with the game maneuvering this way. You can look at any number of games from indie to large companies and see them moving in the same trajectory. You can still have a Dungeness crawl and Winterness crawl at any time you want, and you could strip away parts of the game or just have them with the current game. You will have to make adjustments because nobody wants to just push a mule in front of themselves to take blows the way we once did, because it's just not necessary or fun. But, and that's why games like Shadowdark or other things that strip us back to some of the basics then force that kind of behavior, right? Or encourage it. They return us to that because you have none of the other things that the games have been evolving towards generally, right? But it isn't some deliberate anti-fun brigade. It's the opposite. And it's really easy to go out on the internet and feel like everybody in the world wants a hex crawl, because we are all having a lot of fun, particularly this year, of taking apart hex crawl mechanics, thinking about them, thinking about journey rules, right? This has been a lot of fun the last 2 years. But you will also find that a lot of people will try these things out and go, yeah, that didn't work the way I wanted it to, for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into now. But there is no magic return to, the exploration pillar. If only we had a procedural way of going through a dungeon, fun would flow. No. Most people that try these kinds of very procedural approaches end up not liking them. There is a reason why we're where we are right now, right? And that's complicated. We could spend 10 shows on it, but I think it's really important to state nobody's ruining fun here. It's the opposite of that.
Right. And if it does ruin fun, it's not the choice to do so. It's the choice to present other options. And if more people go to that option, that is sort of the audience as a whole dictating what they prefer.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point, that there is what is the overall enormous RPG audience leaning towards, right? Versus what are they experimenting with, versus what do you want to use? And probably you don't want to use just one thing. And I'm doing at GameholeCon this year, I'm doing a series where I explore with players collaboratively. We explore various ways of exploring wilderness and moving through, traveling. And one of the things I try to show in that is you've got to feel out what you like. And the answer may be, I like various systems for various needs, right? And I think that's what I would encourage more than anything else, is just play, have fun, try things, and that will be your own exploration of exploration.
And if you want a great experience, get in on that game. I did Teos's trap exploration GameholeCon experience last time, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was a great time and very informative. So get in on that if you can.
Thanks.
The other question today comes from Anders via Mastodon. Now, this question came in response to one of the world building tips I gave, but I wanted to take a longer time than just 200 characters to answer. So I asked Anders if I could answer on the show. Said yes. So the tip was make your elements both universal and unique. That's key. The people, creatures, places, and so on need to represent the world and its stories while also being relatable on their own level. The temple priest needs to be both a representative of the ethos and a recognizable individual. And Anders said, as a newest GM, this feels like the big challenge for me. That balance between lore accurate and table relevant. Do you happen to have some examples or ideas of this being done well? And what I did was I went to television and fiction for this, but I hope this example clarifies things. Think of Star Trek and over the years, the different captains we've had, right? Because each captain represents this Star Trek ideal of leadership, of the best of humanity in action, and of the values that Starfleet provides through its Prime Directive and its other rules. So, but each captain is also a unique individual that's very different from one another. So, right, Kirk is reckless and innovative and thinks outside the box, often too far. He gets too curious for his own good, right? But then, and also in the meta, that's the 1960s view of those things. Then we get Picard, who is stoic and follows the rules and is a bit rigid, but he has the experience and the wisdom to know when to push, know when to go beyond that. And then we could go down with Pike and Cisco and Janeway and Archer through all the shows, all representing sort of the same ethos within their time period that the show came out, but also very different from each other. And that's what I'm trying to describe here is each of them represent a larger thing, but each of them are individuals that if you use them in a story, become unique to that
Mm.
particular story.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
really cool. I love it,
one
Shawn.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. One thing about what we did, there's the Crimson Court in Astoya in Grim Hollow, and these are seven vampire leaders of this nation, and we made sure they're all vampires, right? They're all evil, they're all conniving, but each one is different. Each one has its own flavor, so that if you go off in a different direction and want to tell a specific story, you can work with some of them in one way. You can tempt them in another way that is different from what you could do with any of the others. So that's the sort of thing I mean when I talk about that in world building.
Yeah, I love it. And I think one thing that's nice, I'll just add one little bit, which is that when you're making them unique, you can create contrasts, right? So you have that,
Mhm.
like that priest you're talking about, does not have to embody all of the things perfectly. In fact, having a contrast, right? The part where they stray actually creates that nice juxtaposition and makes it stand out that actually the rules are this way, but here's what they're doing. That actually is much more memorable than if you just try to explain how they always hold every tenant.
Yep. Yep. So that's going from like a flat world to a round world just
Mm-hmm.
through those details. So thank you for those questions. We'll get to more of them next time, but now we're going to jump quickly into our news and commentary, starting with the previews for the Dragon Delves hardcover adventure book. So Teos, where did you catch this tasty preview?
On something called Paste Magazine, which has a preview of one of the 10 adventures that come out in that book, which Dragon Delves comes out July 8th. So it's just around the
Wow.
corner.
Yeah.
Time flies, Shawn. Time flies.
Yep. So what adventure did it cover and what do we know?
Baker's Doesn't, good name, good name,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
features a gold dragon. We've heard this before. Each of them is themed after a particular dragon, and they very carefully sort of took what the dragon represents and some of those themes. And then the other thing they did is highly influence what the adventure is based on the artwork. And so here the
Mm-hmm.
artwork is a storybook style candy colored land. If you have kids, you know this really well, or if you recall your childhood, board books, things like that. So the article includes several images like whimsical art of a one-eyed sapient baby doll. Looks kind of like a Cyclops baby, but that's what we were told it was, with a morning star lollipop. There's a candy-covered gingerbread house in a forest, and then a map that could be right out of a kid's board book. Designer Justice Armand and artist Andrew Kolb are interviewed and share that each adventure has a different style. Some are lighter, some are darker, and then just bringing in these fantasies associated with the dragons. Justice says that they called these experimental presentations in how they approached the encounter design or the format that is presented to the DM to run. So it aims to make the adventures more immediately legible and runnable for players. Quote, at the front of every one of these adventures is a new format for how we've abridged it, he told the interviewer, so that you can really read that first page and then start the adventure.
Cool. Well, we will obviously be looking at that book when it comes out, and we even promised to run one of the like solo adventures if I remember
Yeah,
correctly. So
yeah, we should totally do that.
we'll see if we can get to that point. Hopefully, there will still be people at Wizards of the Coast when that rolls around because there have been more layoffs. As we discussed before, on June 16th, Todd Kendrick posted on Bluesky that he had been laid off from D&D. He thanked Chris Perkins, Jeremy Crawford, and the entire D&D team for being some of the kindest, most talented, and passionate people I've ever known. He said it was his dream job, and the tabletop community has given him everything. And hats off to Todd, who did a great job coming from D&D Beyond before just doing his own Patreon, then D&D Beyond, and then at Wizards doing great interviews and putting on a lot of great content. Some of which we got our news from.
Yeah.
But then on LinkedIn, Michael Galvis, who is a content marketing manager, reported that he was laid off as well. And then the Wall Street Journal reported that Hasbro laid off 3% of its staff, or about 150 people, with the reason being, a slowdown in toys as always, and the tariffs that go along with that.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of links in our show note to those stories.
Speaking of departures,
Yeah, speaking of departures, we have Daggerheart news. Ivan Van Norman has departed Darrington Press. This was announced, I think, a day after we got the news that Chris and Jeremy had gone to Darrington Press.
yeah.
Ivan said that people kept reaching out and asking about Daggerheart and a new hires. So he posted in LinkedIn that he left the company earlier this month without telling anyone, apparently, or without reporting it out loud, which shows the difference between Wizards and Daggerheart and Darrington Press. But he spoke positively about his time there, and he says he's focusing on Hunters Entertainment, a company that he began 15 years ago. And then naturally, people started asking about other people at Daggerheart or at Darrington Press, including Spencer Stark, who co-designed or was the lead designer on Daggerheart. And what did Spencer have to say, Teos?
Yeah, that was fun because you start worrying, right? And fans start worrying. And so Spencer said on Reddit, not to worry. I'm still the lead designer in Daggerheart, and I'm not going anywhere. Jeremy and Chris are here to help us continue to build out Darrington Press, Daggerheart, and otherwise. But the vision, the approach, and the game style are not going to change. Quite the opposite, in fact, because I'm now able to solely focus on the stuff I'm passionate about with Daggerheart. For context, I told the team from day one at Darrington that I wasn't really interested in moving to a position where I was only overseeing people and no longer doing design work itself, even if that meant hiring additional people so I could continue doing the game design. I just want to build games. So this is the ideal scenario for me and the kind of work I love to do. And I tell you, Shawn, if there's one thing that I love about a person I work with, especially if I'm the boss in the situation, is a person that knows what they want
Mm-hmm.
and a person who doesn't aspire to wildly climb up just for the sake of it. Oh, what a rare gem they are. And thank you to them.
Yeah, I feel that so hard, Spencer. So, uh, you know, congratulations on not getting into the position where you need to manage other people and can create games. And that sort of went along with what I was thinking when they were talking about Jeremy and Chris joining, is not just that they're great game designers and celebrities, but they have experience overseeing staff
Yeah.
and getting things done through other people as well as themselves. And that can be just as important as, being down there in the word mines, creating the games and creating the content. So, that might be a role that they step into seamlessly to allow other people to continue to do what they love to do.
Yeah. Great point. Great point.
Yep. We have the Diana Jones Award finalists announcement. The Diana Jones, of course, is the award for, quote, believing the best exemplified excellence in the field of gaming for the past year. So it can mean anything. It can be a product, it can be a concept, it could be an organization. And so the four nominees this year are Charlie Hall, a journalist and editor covering tabletop games, formerly with Polygon Magazine or Polygon Online. Daybreak, a board game designed by Matt Lecoq and Matteo Manapace, published by CMYK. Rascal News, a website dedicated to tabletop games, founded by Lynn Codega, Rowan Zioli, and Chase Carter. And Rose Estes, a novelist and gamebook designer. So those people are nominees or groups, and they will be announced at Gen Con on July 30th. The winner will be announced. Any thoughts on that list?
I think it was James Wallace maybe pointed out on Bluesky that it's interesting that it says like people who did things this year or the previous year, and a couple of these, it's like, well, are they being recognized as a lifetime achievement award, or did they do something particularly this year? And it's just something I think the Diana Jones Award, maybe they want to consider, but maybe not. They are such a quirky award that maybe, like, for example, with Charlie Hall, they're thinking, this is also an award that recognizes layoffs in the industry and how it impacts everybody, or the changing nature of news, But I almost wonder if that shouldn't be part of the title, right? So with Rosa Estes, what are we recognizing if it isn't her work last year, which is the stated thing that the award covers, then let's label that and make that the award too, is what I would say. But who am I? Nobody. But I'm glad it exists. I'll take all the award kind of varieties out there. They all add something. So it'll be good to see who they pick.
Yeah. And we go from the good news of the award to the bad news of a cancellation for a game. Evil Hat had announced that they were working on the Tomb Raider RPG, but on Bluesky recently, Evil Hat reported that they are canceling that RPG after creative differences with the licensor. The quote or quotes were, "We couldn't get our vision to gel with the licensors, so we've chosen to part ways. We're proud of the work they've done and plan to retool the project as a standalone game with a fresh original setting."
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we've talked about this before. Licensing sometimes sounds like the best thing ever, and sometimes it sounds like the worst. And Star Wars is the one I always hold up. That most of the companies that have done all the Star Wars stuff, they may be fan favorites, but they were not lines that stuck around for various reasons. And we could look at Song of Ice and Fire and all number of examples.
Yeah. As I've attended the licensing expo in Las Vegas for the last 2 years, and I've learned a lot about, or a lot more, I should say, about licensing and some of the pitfalls and some of the procedures or lack of procedures. And it is a fraught enterprise. And if you're lucky enough to land with a licensor who gets role-playing games and is willing to bend a little bit to make sure that medium sings rather than is just the t-shirt of role-playing games. It's an interesting process.
Yeah.
DarkHorse Comic has shared the first D&D comic series called The Fallbacks. So tell us about this.
Yeah, we talked about on episode 181 of this show, we talked about the novel The Fallbacks, which I was given a copy of by the publisher. I read it and enjoyed it a great deal. It's a fun group of heroes. They have an Audiog, like a baby Audiog companion. They're just the priest, rather than just worship one god, kind of pays off or makes deals with various gods. There's some really neat angles to the characters. So they're a great pick for something like this to be turned into a comic book form. And this is the first release that we've been given a glimpse into, now revealed from DarkHorse Comics, now that they have the license for D&D Comics. So this will take us to the city of Loudwater, and these Fallbacks will be pulling off a heist for the ages, we're told. The sly rogue elf Tess, the loyal human fighter Anson, the bombastic tiefling bard Lark, the devil-may-care dwarf cleric Baldric, and the ever-hungry Audiog companion Uggy, as they face off against kobold thieves and annoying heroes while on their quest for gold. So it's going to be a 4-issue series. It'll come out in October 2025, and you can see the cover on Game Rant.
And our creator corner this week, we have Jeff Stevens launching Treasures from the Dark for the Shadow Dark game. What does this do? It provides a wealth of new magic items, from armors and shields and weapons and items to items that increase in power as the character levels up, to magic sets that become stronger when you collect all the pieces, some traditional style items with just 1 or 2 benefits, and also you have to have cursed items in there or it wouldn't be a magical item book. It will be available in PDF or print on demand, and if you use Foundry, you can buy it there as well. On the Kickstarter page, you can get a free promo PDF and download that to take a look. Teos, you took a look at some of the promos. What did it look like?
Yeah. We were sent that there's the free download you can get, and we got some additional items shared with us as well. Jeff shared a mummified rat that animates, speaks diabolic, can be the source of spells you cast, so the origin point of them, and has both fun benefits and a curse. Armor that helps you hide and gives you more gear slots as you gain levels, so very useful in the Shadow Dark game. Lizard's Thief armor, which grants camouflage. Neat idea, right? The scale's kind of changing up. Eventually, you get regeneration. So this is an example of the items that grow over time. A glorious blade that can deal extra damage, but also increases danger levels each time the GM rolls for a random encounter. Maybe it's a little too brilliant. A torch holder that deals fire damage to all your foes around you, but expends the torch. So really nice. And we traded some emails with Jeff Stevens talking about his exploration of Shadow Dark, and it was neat to kind of see him thinking about the design of what it's like to design for Shadow Dark versus 5e. So Jeff always brings a lot of intelligence to this and very smart approach.
Yep, that Kickstarter again is called Treasures from the Dark. It's currently going. And there's also a Weapons of Lore for 5e PDF that Jeff just released on Drive-Thru RPG. So if you play 5e, looking for more weapons, you can go get Weapons of Lore there. That was our news and commentary section.